The Seerah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, part 10. So now Allah in His divine decree wishes that the Zamzam well should be found, should be rediscovered, and this should be done by none other than Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As I've said many times before, this is all divine intervention. This is not coincidental. This is happening with the decree of Allah, and Allah Ta'ala is laying the foundation for the coming of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because whoever was to discover the well of Zamzam, he would become the hero of Arabia, and he would have immense honor and respect. So Allah Ta'ala chose none other than Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because at that time Abdul Muttalib had eventually become the leader of the Makkah, and he was honored, he was loved, he had great authority and respect. But Allah Ta'ala wanted to enhance that even more. Allah Ta'ala wanted to elevate his status amongst the people even more. Now Abdul Muttalib, he had a great attachment to the Kaaba. He loved the Kaaba. This was from Allah also. He was on the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he loved the Kaaba, and he loved the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So he loved the fact that Hajra alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam were buried in the Hatim, and so he often sat in the Hatim. In fact, as a chieftain, he would have couches put out for himself. He would tell his servants to put couches for himself in the Hatim, and he would spend long hours sitting there in the burial place of Hajra alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. And such was his attachment to the Kaaba that not only did he sit there during the daytime, but often he also slept in the Hatim. And people allowed that because he was a chieftain. And so, by the divine decree of Allah, through a ru'ya salihah, a blessed dream, and I've mentioned in previous series what the importance of dreams, good dreams are in Islam. Allah Ta'ala helps and guides and inspires through beautiful and true dreams, ru'ya salihah. And this is exactly what happened with Abdul Muttalib. One night he was sleeping in the Hatim, and in a dream he sees that somebody comes to him and says, "Ihfir barra," and dig the barra. He says, "Wa mal barra?" In the dream he asks the person, he says, "What's barra?" But the person, he leaves him, he disappears without answering. Abdul Muttalib wakes up and he's puzzled by this dream, but he knows that this is something special. He doesn't just dismiss the dream. And so he sleeps there again in the Hatim the following night. And the following night, by the divine decree of Allah, he sees a dream. The same person or angel comes to him and says, "Ihfir madhnoona." This is another name of the Zamzam well. These are all titles of Zamzam. So Abdul Muttalib says, "Wamal madhmoona." So the person disappears without answering. Third night he sleeps in the Hatim again. This time the person comes and says, "Ihfir tayba." Dig the tayba. He says, "Wamay tayba?" What is tayba? Person disappears again. Fourth night when he sleeps there, the person comes and he says, "Ihfir Zamzam." Now, all these other names were not popular. So Abdul Muttalib, possibly he had no idea what the person was talking about. But he had been told ihfir, meaning dig. So he knew that it's something about finding something, but he didn't know what's going on. But when he said ihfir Zamzam, maybe Abdul Muttalib had a better idea because he'd heard of the Zamzam well. So he asked, "Wama Zamzam?" What is Zamzam? So he says, it's a well of water, such water that never runs out and never decreases, and it satisfies the thirst of countless pilgrims. So Abdul Muttalib then, he woke up from the dream, and then he knew exactly what he was looking for, and exactly what he had been instructed to dig for, and he was jubilant, he was really excited. And just before I go on, let me explain that the other words that the person or the angel had used for Zamzam in the dream, Barra, Mazmuna, Tayba, these are all qualities of Zamzam and different titles for Zamzam, and they mean things like pure and plentiful and abundant and vast. So these are names that describe the qualities of Zamzam water. So Abdul Muttalib now, he wakes up and, in the dream also, after the angel or the person tells him what Zamzam water is, my daughter is looking at me and laughing because I keep forgetting to mention things. Forgive me. So now, after he enumerates the qualities of Zamzam, the angel or the person, and tells him what Zamzam is, then he tells him where to dig also. He gives him the exact location. He says that where there is dung and blood, and where you find an ant's nest, and where the raven pecks the ground, that is where you must dig. So he gives him 3 signs. He says where there is blood and dung, and where you'll find an ant's nest, and where the raven, bird, or the crow, comes and pecks the ground, that is where you must dig. Abdul Muttalib awakes from the dream. He's extremely excited and jubilant. And to thank Allah, first of all, he starts doing tawaf. He finishes the tawaf. He comes upon the Multazam, the place between the Hajr Aswad and the door, which was a special place and still is a special place to do dua, to make dua, and it's a place where duas are accepted. So he stands there and he starts crying to Allah that, oh Allah, you've shown me this, oh Allah, help me, guide me, help me. And as he's making this dua, he hears the flapping of a bird. He turns around and he sees that there is a raven or a few ravens, and they are pecking the ground. And he knew instantly that this is it now. These are the signs. Because the other sign was the place where there is dung and where there is blood. Now the place where the raven was pecking the ground, as Abdul Muttalib turned around, he saw that the place where he's digging is between, where he's pecking on the ground, is between the 2 idols, Asaf and Naila. So Abdul Muttalib instantly knew that this is a place. Why? Because the people, as I've mentioned before, the mushrikeen, the idolaters of Makkah, they used to sacrifice their animals between these 2 idols, thinking that these idols are our gods, and therefore we make our sacrifices, we make our qurbani between these 2 idols. So there was always blood and dung in that place. So Abdul Muttalib instantly knew. And on top of that, the raven was also pecking on the ground. Abdul Muttalib quickly moved to that place, and when he got close, he looked carefully and he also found an ant's nest. Ants were going into the ground and coming out of the ground. So he was so jubilant and excited, he quickly went home and he got 2 pickaxes, one for himself and one for his one and only son, whose name was Harith. And so he took his son with him, and then they started digging at that place between the 2 idols, Naila and Isaf, and where the raven had been pecking and where there was the ant's nest. Now when they start digging early in the morning, the thuds of their digging, they draw attention. The houses were very close to Kaaba, so the people from their houses, they came outside and they saw that Abdul Muttalib was digging in this most sanctified area. Now, the people, as I've mentioned before, they used to respect the Kaaba, and they could not tolerate anyone desecrating the Kaaba, and so they could not tolerate the fact that Abdul Muttalib now, although he's a chief and he's well respected, he's digging in this place. They could not accept